Good morning and welcome to the SitRep for today, which is the 14th day of June in 2022. It is currently 19 minutes past 8 a.m. in the morning, Australian Eastern Standard Time. For those of you who are on the east coast of Australia, it's another chilly morning. Welcome. A lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment. In fact, it is, I would almost say this is probably one of the more hectic mornings for news that I've gone through. And certainly there are a couple of key indicators where I feel the needle is actually tipping over to the next phase. We're entering into a new world now. So, I mean, what I'm trying to get at here is that I'm often looking at certain key things. There's not really a specific indicator like, well, if the market hits this point, or if, this thing happens, or if this thing happens. There's sort of general spaces, like if I see things kind of lining up, i.e. A lot of parts of the market falling and certain parts of the market falling, which we've seen overnight. Certain countries making certain moves, which we've seen overnight, or build up over the last week. So for me, I'm starting to look at it. And if you've ever listened to these sit reps before, you might find it alarmist, a lot of the things that I talk about. You might not, depending on where your particular set is. If you're somebody who puts the blinkers on and doesn't look at these sort of things, then you're probably listening to me going, well, this dude's a little bit alarmist. However, if you listen to other prepping channels, other news sources and things like that, you might think, and at least where I imagine myself is somewhere in the middle. I try and be a little bit alarmist, a little bit in the camp of like, hey, we need to pay attention here. This is important, but also look, we don't need to freak out. I feel like I'm starting to go over to the point now. Like this morning, I woke up, I started reading things. I'm looking at the way the world's folding out at the moment, and I'm going, okay. My needle might be actually crossing over the threshold into the sky is falling type space now. Not that I'm saying the sky is falling, but I think we just need to actually put the foot on the clutch, change the gear up a little bit now, and have that crossover point where we're now traveling in a faster gear as far as preparation is concerned. I would really advocate and encourage people to step up your preparations that little bit more now, today especially. If there was something that you were sitting on, do not sit on it any longer. If there was something you were thinking about doing, stop thinking, start doing. I'm not saying freak out. I'm not saying quit your jobs, buy guns, bullets, beans, and move to a bunker somewhere. I'm just saying, like, if you have been dragging your toes a little bit as far as preparation, as far as emergency or disaster preparation is concerned, then today should be the day where you actually start to initiate some of those plans. All right. Why am I saying this? Well, let's kick off onto it. One of the big stories, probably the big story for me this morning, was the illustrious leader of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, outlines that direct China's military operations other than war. So essentially, the breakdown is something along these lines. The President Xi Jinping has signed outlines that standardize and provide the legal basis for Chinese troops to carry out missions other than war. So their troops have been kind of like legally limited to only doing things that, like, being deployed anywhere for warlike reasons. But now he's signed off and said they can do it for disaster relief and humanitarian aid reasons. That's good. That's pretty good. Escort. And peacekeeping. This here, when I read that particular piece of writing, that was a big red flag for me. I was like, wait a minute, escorting and peacekeeping. What are they escorting, and whom are they helping with peacekeeping? And I'll come back around to that. And the last bit, and safeguard China's national sovereignty, security, and development interests. Now that I think is very much, that last little part of the sentence there is very much angled towards Taiwan. I think this is probably the most obvious sign that we've had thus far that China is imminently about to move on Taiwan. Couple this with what their defense minister has been coming out within the past 24 hours, which amounts to this. Them saying, if you get in the way of us reunifying Taiwan, we will go to war. Not we might go to war, not it's going to cause more tension. We will go to war. And here's the kicker. We will use nuclear weapons to secure China's sovereignty. Yeah. If you just had the same, like if you had any sort of reaction that was a bit like, whoa, then I think that's the correct reaction that you should have been having, because that's the exact reaction that I had. That is pretty strong language. And there's not a lot of wiggle room in that language either, from what they're saying. Okay, so let me cycle back to this last part that I thought was, that actually got my red flag going. Escort and peacekeeping. Let's rewind a week or so when China went in and was shaking hands with the Solomon Islands, making an agreement with the Solomon Islands. One of the words used in there was peacekeeping operations. So all of a sudden, they make this agreement of, we're not going to like set up a base in Solomon Islands. We're not going to deploy troops or anything there. We'd only do it if they asked us to come in like, an assistance, a humanitarian aid, and some sort of peacekeeping role. So all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, the all the pieces of the puzzle are falling into place here. And all that stuff where people like myself and other people, and even high-ranking people within Australian government at the time, the government at the time, which is no longer the government now, but the government at the time was saying, look, China is possibly setting up almost a ring of steel around Australia and severing Australia away from the rest of its allies, which what we're starting to see now is Australia is a fulcrum point or a linchpin or a very good, at least, launch point for US operations in countering Chinese power. So if you were China and you were looking at that going, well, US has a pretty good foothold here with Australia as their ally, how do we cut Australia off then? How do we stop that? This would probably be the way that you do it. So this is huge news as far as I'm concerned. In fact, this is probably one of the biggest things that developments in this area that I have read in the past couple of months, and how this actually ends up playing out. Like, I hope that I'm just tinfoil hatting it here, and that I'm a little bit crazy, and that the things that I'm seeing are not true. It's just all some weird coincidence. But as I said, there's too much evidence now, and my needle has now gone over that point to being in a slightly alarmed state. I'm not alarmed, but I'm slightly alarmed. So I've gone from alert but not alarmed to alert and alarmed now, if that makes any sense. I'm always trying to, find the counterpoint to everything that I read, the counterpoint to everything that I'm feeling and seeing, and the picture that I'm formulating. I'm going, yeah, okay, but where are my research biases here? Where am I falling into a trap? Where are my blinders? So I'm always trying to caveat everything that I say and the information that I put out there with a counterpoint. However, and so my counterpoint is, I'm not freaking out, I'm not fully alarmed, but I can tell you 100% what I'm doing. okay, this is just what I'm doing. You do whatever you feel is right. I will be upping my preps from here on in. I will be really, really critically going through my preps, and I'll be looking at my food stores that I've currently got, and I'll be downgrading it all. I'll be going, okay, where have I thought, yeah, that amount of rice, that's probably, I could stretch that out for 3 months. No, I'm not stretching anything out. What if I actually had to use that rice every single day for every meal? All of a sudden it shrinks down. What if I had to use that rice for 3 extra people, for 10 extra people now? All right, now I need to start to really build up my food stores. I really need to start getting into that garden and making that garden grow somehow. I don't know how, but I'm having a shocking season this year, but I'm going to keep working on it. All these sorts of things. Really starting to organize my preps. I'm a little bit fly by the seat of my pants kind of person, and I get away with it a lot because of my background, and I can sort of do things. But now I'm like, no, that the safety wheels are off now. I'm getting fully organized, or I'm getting much more organized. Not fully organized. I'm getting much more organized with my preps. I'm pulling in my mag. We're starting to go through some more serious stuff in the coming days, weeks, and months. Again, I don't want to freak you out, but this is my recommendation for you. So what other news do we have coming out of this area? Taiwan is actually open to engagement with China, apparently. That's a good thing, right? Like China's going, hey, let's start talking about stuff. But I think Taiwan also sees the writing on the wall here. They can't stop a sustained Chinese invasion. So they're going, okay, what can we do to slow this ship up? Because it looks like it's coming. Or at least this is what I'm reading in these sort of stories. And if Solomon Islands, if you thought that was just me making up shit, no, China trains with new security partner in Pacific. Chinese police have started training their Solomon Islands counterparts, the island nation announced on Sunday. The training took place at the Royal Solomon Islands Police Force HQ and involved practicing basic equipment handling skills, basic survival skills, self-defense, and counter-attack posture and movement. The agreement further soured the already strained ties between Australia and China. No surprise there. So it is happening. It is happening. This is police force, obviously, but this is the first step for what I believe is actually going to happen in this area. All right, so that's what's happening in and around China at the moment. Obviously, this is probably the biggest concern for me. The second biggest concern. All right, the second biggest thing that I looked at and was like, whoa, that's something interesting, is what's happening in the markets at the moment. If you open up the markets, it's red. Everything's red. Everything's bad. Even gold and silver is going down at the moment. Unfortunately for us, it's not a buying opportunity in reality, because also the Aussie dollar is going down in relation to the greenback, in relation to the US dollar. So it's not making gold any more affordable for us right now. However, gold and silver is still at a pretty good price. I mean, that's all relative, but I still personally can see it going up. Up to you whether you invest in these sorts of things. It's just a real bummer that it's kind of gone down a little bit, and I always look at that and go, ooh, maybe I can, get a little bit more here. But our dollar's gone down with it, so it's kind of like just sort of holding stable for Aussie dollars at the moment, Aussie dollar roos for gold and silver. Crypto. If you got money in crypto, I'm really sorry. This morning, it's not good news. What happened yesterday was pretty much a bloodbath across the board. Off memory, I think Bitcoin's gone under 25K. So to put that in perspective, it was up around 50K not too long ago. So it's about halved in not too short of a distance of time. Ethereum, which is, I think, the next biggest one, and the way I usually think about when you're talking about bitcoins is, crypto coins, is Bitcoin's like your gold. It's like worth more than everything else. And then Ethereum is like your silver. They're both relatively stable. Ethereum maybe moves around a bit more, but it's a kind of almost a simile to the price index of what we could think about. Hey, let's shine a light on this. Interestingly, Ethereum is under 1,800 now. So Ethereum was like 3,000, 3,500 or something like that. It's about 1,770, I want to say, this morning. So it's actually less than gold is per ounce right now. Not that that matters, not that that is any sort of indication, but I just found it interesting. And the rest of all the altcoins, just it's not a good day. I'm not really into crypto though, personally. Like, I've dabbled a little bit in it. It's not really my jam. If you are into it, good for you. But I hope you've you sold off at the right time, or maybe just hang out for a little bit and wait for it to bounce, because it doesn't look good there. All right, the third most important thing for me was the energy crisis. And I'll talk about the energy crisis in the world as a whole, but particular to Australia. So this story came out on ABC last night, where they reported that up in Queensland in Australia, there were power supply issues reported. So a few of the energy producers came out and said, look, we're putting out a warning at the moment. There will be blackouts for Queensland and parts of New South Wales tonight. And that struck me as odd. I'm like, wait, why are they predicting blackouts? Is there some sort of major infrastructure works that they're doing? Is sort of storm that's hitting something that might destroy or take down parts of the infrastructure? No, it had nothing to do with that. They didn't budget in enough energy, which in this day and age strikes me as highly, highly odd. The fact that they're not predicting that they're going to make enough energy for the amount of people that are using energy. Again, there wasn't any adverse conditions apart from it being cold. It was a little bit colder than people are probably used to. However, like, extreme heat, extreme cold, things like that can fluctuate in energy usage. But again, like, it's 2022. Why wouldn't they be able to predict this? We've been doing this playing this game for a little while now. And I was musing several months ago that as a kid growing up in the 80s, I remember blackouts like on the regular. Like, we'd have blackouts all the time. And then I thought, I haven't experienced many blackouts in the past probably 10 years, except for the past 2 years. I think in the past 2 years, I've experienced more blackouts than I have in the previous 10 years, because the energy system had kind of like, we've got it now. We know how to surge. We know when to surge. We know when people use energy, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden we started having more and more blackouts. And, a lot of these were weather effects. We were having huge storms, we were having big rain events, and then people were, crashing cars into poles. The weather was taking down certain parts of the infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. What I hadn't seen or heard of before was an energy company not budgeting for the right amount of energy to be used. And then not even just being caught out by it, predicting it, going, oh, by the way, we're not going to be able to make that energy. I'm like, wait a minute, something's weird here. So I've dug a little bit into it, and there are several conflicting stories about it as to why exactly, and a lot of really, really slippery language around it. But I think it boils down to this. They can't afford it. The energy companies don't want to spend the money to produce the electricity, which makes no sense to me. Either that, or there is a budget on the fossil fuel energies created that is enforced from somewhere else, because apparently they enacted some sort of, where was it? They invoked their powers under the national electricity rules in order to provide sufficient generation. So that shows me that they could provide this energy to Australians, yet they were saying that they weren't going to. It's not that there was a shortfall, it's that they were not going to under some sort of framework, under some sort of structure, the national energy, the national electricity rules, which are enforced by the, what are they called? Either the National Energy Market Watchdog or the Australian Energy Market Operator, AEMO. This here is something, these kinds of events were the sort of thing that I've been the harbinger of for quite some time now. And I continually said to you, don't worry about it too much in Australia right now because we have a lot of fat in our system. We are well insulated from these sorts of effects for a little while. Maybe at the end of this year, maybe into next year, we'll start to see these things. Then this starts to pop up, like released on national news like that in one day. I was just like, whoa, hang on. We're not at the place that I thought we were at. Australia is not at the place I thought we were at. And again, I was just a little bit put out or caught aback from this, where I was like, I may have miscalculated, and I may have come on here and been telling you for quite some time, don't worry about it. Australia, we're fine. We grow heaps of wheat. We're going to be great. What I probably didn't factor in was the amount of asinine government regulation that we have over every single industry that we have within Australia, which is going to be affecting us. It's going to be crippling us when we need emergency food, electricity, energy of any sort, whatever it is. And this, I think, is an example of just that. Or the bureaucracy that we've built into our system. But again, what do we learn from this? Can we rely on the companies and on the governments to supply our electricity to keep our lights turned on? No, we can't. We can't rely on them to keep our food cold in our fridges. Who can we rely on for that? Well, it's us. We need to become self-reliant. We need to become self-reliant in all factors, and energy is one of them. So, like I said, if there was something that you've been kind of sitting on, you've been looking at that solar power generator or that petrol, diesel, gas generator or that solar setup or whatever it is, and you've been going, yeah, maybe I will. I don't know if I can afford it. Maybe I should. I think you should probably just go ahead and do that now. Go and get that stuff. Go and get yourself set up so that you have at least a backup so that you can keep some lights on in your home, that you can keep communication devices powered, and that you can keep food fresh and or frozen in your home. That's what I want you to do. I want you to be okay if anything goes wrong. All right. Let's just start punching into stories left, right, and center. Finland won't join NATO without Sweden. They've decided they're going to hold hands and walk into NATO. Obviously, there's still the issues around Turkey saying, nah, bugger off. Can't come in. You support terrorists. You support the people we're trying to kill, so you're not coming in. But I thought that was interesting that they've decided to become this united front to head into NATO together. A little bit more on this crypto stuff. Two of the, it's not just crypto going down in price. There's a couple of other indicators that I found quite alarming. Two of the largest crypto exchanges, including the largest one, Binance, halted withdrawals. So when we're seeing this sort of stuff, quite often marketplaces like this, when things are starting to get sold off really quickly, they can do a little bit of a stop, because these sort of things work like an avalanche, or they like a set of dominoes. Like one person starts selling, it freaks out a couple other people, they start selling, and all of a sudden somebody else looks at it and goes, 5 people just sold, quick, let's sell ours. And then you've got like 100 people selling, and then you've got thousands and thousands of people selling. And everyone's just doing it because everyone else is selling. So quite often when we're seeing these big sell-offs and these big drops, markets will just go like pull the power plug, go, all right, everyone just chill out, give it 12 hours, and we'll turn it back on and reboot. And everyone has a breather and goes, oh yeah, I don't know what we'll. And so, that's essentially what we're seeing here is two of these big Bitcoin and or crypto marketplaces were halted trading very quickly when the bottom was going out. And that's one thing that I always talk about with, if you're into crypto, I can see heaps and heaps of upside of crypto and heaps of good stuff maybe in the future for crypto. However, the one bad thing, is literally nothing. It's ones and zeros in cyberspace on some server somewhere. So one sentiment or the belief, solid commodities where at least there is actually something. There is something there that can be utilized for something. Point is, which is much more than I can say for some of the other PMs, that Australia should limit gas exports. Do I think he's right or wrong on this? I don't really know. But I will say this. This is another indicator that something is not right in the system. When eventual people like this coming out and saying stuff like, hey, we need to actually pull in, we need to put the borders up, we need to not export stuff in the world. Everyone's sort of going, oh, let's not export, let's offer ourselves. Is that a good policy or a bad policy? Talk about big runs where people can go and buy stuff from the supermarkets, but when people start hit pockets, steal shit, it's just as prices increase of daily staples throughout Australia as well. And I have talked about this in the past. We are apparently beginning to lock everything up. Razors have been like locked up on and off for quite some time in Australia. The fuck would you steal a razor? But there must be some very clean-shaven criminals out there, because it's all clean-shaven. We're also seeing soap locked up, socks. This isn't just a new thing either. It's actually been soaring since the pandemic. So, this is kind of the tail end of it, kind of sitting in the boiling water as frogs. And now we're realizing like, oh God, it's hot. Does anyone else feel like it's hot in here? It's hot. This is what we're seeing. We've seen increased crime rates, increased theft rates within places like supermarkets and retail. You can't even come in. Generator in 2 weeks. Awesome. Great work. What kind are you getting? I'm curious. Let us know. If you feel like it. You don't have to divulge that information if you don't. Personally, I have an EcoFlow. The brand is EcoFlow Delta. EcoFlow Delta, I think it's a pretty good one. 1800 watt solar generator. It's essentially a big solar power bank. But because it's outputting at the same sort of level as a generator might, then we call them solar generators. But good piece of tech. I love it. Easy to use, easy to charge. I've used it in emergencies. It does what it says on the box. It pumps out that power. So it's a good one. They've put out a number of newer models now. There's the EcoFlow Delta Max and one other one that I can't remember. EcoFlow Delta Max and one other one that I happen to get, and I like it. Okay, so anyway, what I was talking about before you distracted me, I was farm living with solar generators. How dare you distract me talking about gear? You know how much of a gear bandit I am. Let me just drink some water out of my Grail water purifier. I need to get some sponsorship. If anyone knows any people that do camping gear sponsorship, send them my way. All right, food prices have been on the rise in the past few months, and rice, a staple of Asian market here, primarily built around fertilizer prices, but also weather effects, also availability of weather effects as in over flooding of land and destruction of land, heat in certain areas, and transportation fees and things like that as well, the ability to get it out and about. And then on top of that, we've got things like COVID lockdowns, keeping farmers out of the fields. So a number of issues have been pointing towards this. This shouldn't be new news to anyone if you've been listening to me. I've been talking about it, but now mainstream media is us, and they're starting to figure it out, and they're rightfully concerned. So more big bags of rice, seal it in my bags with oxygen absorbers, and seal that away in a dark and secure area. That might be something you want to think about doing as well. Oz Farm Living, lol, it's an EcoFlow Delta Pro. Good for you. Nice one. Love to know what you're doing on the farm as well, Oz Farm Living. I think off memory you got some land there, so love to see what you're doing out there. All right, have there been fires in any food plants recently? Yes, they keep happening, and but it's a coincidence. It's all just a freaking coincidence. What's going to happen with our fuel prices? Let's talk about fuel prices right now, because Libya shuts down nearly all of its fields, oil market as it is, and high prices as it is, and another oil producing country going offline. It's not going to help. Seriously, Ayn Rand had a crystal ball and looked into the year 2022 and then wrote it from the perspective of being in 1957. Because all this sort of stuff, you're like, huh, was this Francis? Who is John Galt? Okay, Nicaragua. So that central country that had done some handshake deals with, that was a pretty pathetic, had done some high five deals with Russia. Well, Russian army will be deploying to Nicaragua for humanitarian operation. Done some high five deals with Russia. Well, Russian army will be deploying to Nicaragua for humanitarian operation. The West is like, you're lying to us. How dare you do it? Where do you think they learned the use of this sort of language? This is what the West does. This is exactly what we've done for years, for decades. We're moving in for humanitarian reasons. This is just a peacekeeping operation that we're doing here. And so now they're doing it, and it's just a peacekeeping operation that we're doing here. And so now they're doing it, and it's almost like this tongue-in-cheek little slap in the face to the world as they sort of stuff. Awake Aussie Prepper says, if you're on a tight budget, you can use a lockable filing cabinet to store your preps in. Good idea. And 44-gallon drums are great to also store food in. They protect against rats and mice. You can find them on the Facebook. I've got some old 44-gallon oil drums that I use just for construction sort of stuff and things around the farm. But I go to my local rural outlet joint, and they get in stock these plastic 44-gallon drums, so sealable plastic. Plastic that it's not really affected by the sun, so you can leave it outdoors a lot. Sunlight doesn't get into it, and it's totally sealable as well. So that's usually what I use for my food storage, my long-term food storage solution, is that it's in there, and then I'll seal things in individual bags within that, and I'll put oxygen absorbers, like big the kind of oxygen absorbers you get to put in your wardrobe, if you know what I mean. And I chuck them, a couple of them, into the barrel, and then seal that barrel up as well. And then write on the lid what's in the barrel, because there's nothing worse than just having like 6 barrels there, and you're like, where are my beans? But yeah, great idea. Okay, so Russians in Central America, that's great. Great news. Another country on the verge of collapse. Which one is it now? Which little third world country is on the verge of collapse, which is the next domino to fall? I hear you. We've had a number of other countries and African countries teetering on the edge. So what other poor little country that we don't have to worry about is about to collapse? Oh, it's actually Japan. Yeah, not a third world country at all, but arguably the most developed country in the world, is on the verge of a systemic collapse with dramatic, unpredictable, non-linearities in financial markets. I got no freaking clue what that means, to be honest. But a lot of the other stuff, a lot of their what their currency is doing, what their financial market is doing, where all the signals are pointing, is not in a good place. It does not look good for Japan right now, and they look like they're on the verge of collapse. So, you know me, I'm always looking for these countries, looking for the next one that's going to happen for a number of reasons, because I think it's going to affect bigger and bigger countries as it goes along. And like I said, I thought Sri Lanka was really the canary in the coal mine. It's something to not be ignored. And also, there are lessons to be learned when these countries are in these states. I